Hey guys, tonight, we're not diving into dragons or scandals or the kind of betrayal that makes your blood simmer. No, tonight is quiet or so quiet. In fact, you can almost hear the creak of an old rocking chair and the hum of a porch light that hasn't been turned off in 50 years. Picture this, a tiny wooden house nestled on the edge of a sleepy American town, the kind of place where the gas station still sells jawbreakers and gossip spreads faster than wildfire in July. You live here. And every night since 1972, you've turned on that same porch light. Same time, same click, same flicker. People used to ask why, but they stopped, because the answer never changed. He might come home. You probably won't survive this if you're expecting a fairy tale. This isn't about fireworks and kiss in the rain kind of love. This is about the kind of love that sets like sediment in your bones, unmoving, unshakable, maybe even unreasonable. But here you are, 50 years later, porch light still glowing like a lighthouse for a sailor who never sent word. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you're listening from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You twist the bulb into place, just like you always have. It's one of those soft amber kinds, not too bright, just enough to say someone's waiting. The same bulb brand you've bought for decades, even though they changed the packaging somewhere around '94. It's become a ritual, more familiar than brushing your teeth. Porch light on door-locked tea kettles simmering, and silence, always that silence. Neighbors used to whisper. Kids dared each other to ring your doorbell on Halloween, then sprinted away like you were some kind of witch. But the truth, you're just someone who remembers. And remembering, as it turns out, is a lonely sport. Back in '72, America was knee-deep in polyester suits and vinyl records. The average rent was about $165 a month, and Nixon was still in the White House, although not for long. Vietnam had a chokehold on the country's conscience. Every night, black and white TVs buzzed with casualty numbers and shaky jungle footage, and every day mailboxes across the country either offered relief or devastation. Yours was empty, always empty. He promised to write. He held your face like something precious, called you Sunbeam like it was your name, told you he'd be gone a year tops, one rotation in Nam, then back with stories, and a plan to get married. You even had to dress a creamy thing with lace and little pearl buttons you found at a yard sale for $20. You kept it in the closet. Still do. Historians still argue whether the draft shattered more homes or built more legends. But to you, it built nothing. Just a silence shaped like a man. And still you wait? Sometimes you tell yourself the porch light is for you. That it helps you sleep, that the yellow glow keeps the loneliness at bay. But that's a lie, and you know it. It's always been for him. Always. In ancient Egypt, people believed lighting oil lamps kept wandering souls company. Quirky, right? But somehow you get it. You wouldn't be surprised if some long-lost pharaoh was nodding from beyond the grave, approving your little nightly tribute. People moved on. You didn't. It's not that you couldn't. You just didn't want to. There's a difference. Somewhere in town, a couple got divorced over a toaster. Another opened a boutique yoga studio where the old grocery store used to be. A Walmart sprouted up like a weed, and now kids don't even know what a rotary phone is. Time moved. You stayed. And that porch light, it kept shining through them all. The last time you saw him, the train had just pulled into the station, a beast of steel and smoke hissing, like it knew how final this was. You'd both skipped breakfast that day, too nervous. You held his hand all the way from your mama's porch to the platform, your palms damp with something that felt like static electricity and heartbreak. He had a small duffel bag, a military haircut. He still wasn't used to, and a smile that couldn't hide the weight behind it. "You'll get my letters right?" he asked. You nodded. He squeezed your fingers one last look, then disappeared into the car like it had swallowed him whole. You stayed there after the train left long enough for a conductor to ask if you were all right. You weren't. But you said you were, because that's what people do, right? You keep going, even when the going already left. He said he'd write. A week passed, then 2, then a month. You checked the mailbox every morning like it was part of your blood pressure routine. Nothing. The mailman avoided your eyes. Vietnam was a fog to most people back then. Half the country didn't even understand why we were there. Historians still argue whether America's involvement was driven more by Cold War paranoia or economic interests, but none of that mattered to you. You didn't care about geopolitics. You just cared about the boy who called you Sunbeam. By 1973, most troops were coming home, some on 2 feet, some in coffins. Your neighbors wept, cheered, waved flags, and you just stood at your window clutching a mug of lukewarm coffee, watching the street. Still nothing. There was a time when you thought maybe he'd show up on your birthday, or at Christmas, or at your high school reunion. Once you even dreamed he came back during a rainstorm, stood soaking on the porch, grinning like no time had passed. You woke up with your pillow soaked too. In 1975, you found a news clipping at the library, a list of named soldiers MIA. His was there, 4 rows down. You ran your finger across the paper, half expecting it to smudge. It didn't. Still no confirmation. No body. No funeral. Just 3 haunting letters, missing in action. You didn't plan on waiting 50 years. You thought maybe 5-10 tops. But days bled into decades, and no one ever told you when it was okay to stop. So you didn't. Your family stopped asking about him after a while. Your sister once called it your ghost phase. She meant well. But she never stood at that train station. She never knew how tightly he held your hand, how certain he sounded. Other girls moved on, married, had kids, got divorced. Rinse and repeat. You kept his picture in a locket. It never tarnished, though the chain broke 3 times. You repaired it every time. You even kept his jacket, that olive green thing that smelled like sawdust and teenage dreams. You tried it on once. It swallowed you whole. You laughed at your reflection, then cried for 20 minutes straight. And still the light. Quirky fact. In the 1800s, families used to paint portraits of missing soldiers and leave a chair empty at every holiday meal. You think about that sometimes when you make tea and leave a second cup steeping too long. It's not madness, it's memory, and memory has teeth. You started telling people he was gone. Easier that way. Less questions. But inside some part of you whispered, no, he's just lost. Maybe he's living under a different name. Maybe he forgot everything. Maybe he didn't want you to see what the war did to him. And in the quiet on that porch, as moths buzz around your amber light, you imagine what he'd look like now. Wrinkled gray. Would he still call you Sunbeam? You look up at the stars, some of them dead already, their light only just reaching you. It comforts you in a strange way, because love like starlight might outlast its source. People in town remember you, maybe not by name anymore, but definitely by legend. You're the woman with the porch light, the one who never married, the one who wore the same locket to every church service. You became a kind of living question mark, and in a town this small that's saying something. But you don't mind the whispers. You've outlived most of them anyway. This town hasn't changed as much as it likes to pretend. The bakery still smells like cinnamon at dawn, the post office still closes early on Saturdays, and the movie theater still runs 1 show a night if the projectionist remembers to show up. Sure, there's a coffee shop now with chalkboard menus and drinks named after planets, but deep down, it's the same town you waved goodbye from that morning in '72. You teach at the elementary school for a while, 2nd grade. Sticky fingers lost teeth and that special kind of honesty that only 7-year-olds can get away with. One kid once asked if your husband died in a duel. You laughed so hard you had to sit down. Not quite, you said. But even they caught on eventually. Missed birthdays, no wedding ring, no family photos on your desk, and always that quiet stare you had when the clock hit 3:15 and the room emptied. Every night the routine, light on, tea steeping, one spoon of honey, never two, that old record player Sinatra mostly. You liked the old songs better, the ones where people waited and meant it. Historians still argue whether American towns were more resilient or more repressive during the post-war decades. But your town, it just endured. That's what you did too. Endure. You didn't thrive, not really. You weren't one of those she traveled the world and found herself stories. You found yourself right here year after year, in the same seat by the same window with the same aching hope. You volunteered. You baked pies. You held fundraisers. You were the best friend people never had time to thank. You grew herbs in coffee cans, mailed birthday cards to every child in your class, and once organized a sock drive that made the local paper. But no one ever filled that drawer, the one you kept empty for him. You even lined it with cedar to keep it fresh. One summer in the early 90s, a reporter came knocking, wanted to do a story on America's last great wait. You declined, not because you were shy, but because it felt like cheating. He hadn't come home yet. What was there to tell? And still your porch light flickered on every evening. You made friends, of course, had dinner companions, a bridge club, even flirted with a mailman named George who wore too much aftershave and called you darlin' like he was auditioning for a cowboy film. But no one ever got close enough to ask about the letters or the jacket or the way you still glanced at passing soldiers in uniform with that split-second flash of impossible recognition. Fringe fact of the day. There's a tree in Tula Lake, California, rumored to grow 1 inch for every year. A widow waits to remarry. You read about it once in a magazine at the dentist. You marked the page, then tore it out. You liked the idea that something somewhere measured devotion in inches. You kept everything of his, not just the jacket, but the photos, the records of enlistment, even the birthday card he gave you at 17. To my brightest light, he'd written and drawn a crooked little sun that you traced with your thumb for decades. The ink never smudged. You never let it. And the dreams kept coming, less frequent but just as vivid. He'd walk into your kitchen wearing that uniform, lean on the counter, and say something absurd, like we're out of jam. You'd laugh, then wake up crying. The town never asked about him anymore. They figured you either made peace or lost your mind. The truth was neither. You were just waiting in a world that had stopped giving you reasons to, until that one morning, when the mailbox groaned a little more than usual, when the envelope was tucked behind bills and grocery ads, yellowed, warped, addressed in the neat square handwriting that once made your knees weak. You didn't open it right away. You just stood there, letter pressed to your chest, eyes closed, the street quiet around you, as if the world knew it needed to hold its breath. You don't tear it open. That would be too modern. Instead, you set the letter gently on the kitchen table, like it might shatter if you looked at it too hard. You stare at it for what feels like hours, teacup growing cold in your hands, the sun shifting across the linoleum in slow motion stripes. The postmark reads Billings, Montana, VA System Routing Office, and the date on the back August 14th, 1975. Your heart catches like a skipped record. You pull out your old glasses, worn cracked at the hinge, held together with a tiny piece of duct tape that's seen better decades. The envelope's edges are brown soft, like it traveled through time, not just distance. You inhale dust ink, a faint whiff of old paper, and begin to open it. Inside is a single folded page. No photographs, no second note, just his handwriting. The first line, Sunbeam. I don't know if you'll ever read this. You sit down. The letter goes on halting, careful, like he's speaking through a fog. He writes from a hospital bed in a VA center, says he came back injured. Not visibly at first, but his mind didn't return the same way his body did. The doctors called it shell shock back then, what we now understand as PTSD. It made him angry, mistrustful, quiet, and deeply, deeply ashamed. I didn't want you to see me like that, he writes. I thought letting you believe I was gone would be easier than letting you see what I'd become. You stop reading hand covering your mouth. He says he tried to write sooner many times, but each time the guilt swallowed the ink. This was the letter he finally mailed, the one that never reached you, the one that vanished into some bureaucratic black hole of misfiled envelopes, rerouted mail bins, and underpaid interns. Historians still argue whether the VA system's flaws were a result of rapid expansion post-Vietnam or chronic administrative underfunding. But either way, you never got the words you waited decades for. Until now, a quirky aside. In 2014, a woman in New York received a letter postmarked from 1958. Turns out it had been stuck behind a wall in the old post office building. Makes you wonder how many lives could have changed if drywall had ears. You read the letter again and again, memorizing each scratch of the pen like a sacred relic. He talks about wanting to return, about sitting on his hospital bed and imagining you in that lace yard sale dress. He mentions the bakery, your laugh the way you used to draw hearts on fogged-up windows. I miss your voice most of all, he says, and at the bottom, if you ever get this, I hope it's not too late. You clutch the letter, the paper warm now from your hands. You don't cry, not exactly. It's something softer, a kind of soul sigh. The porch light clicks on by itself. You'd set the timer years ago, back when arthritis made it hard to turn the switch. The glow spills in through the window, golden and soft, pooling around the envelope like a spotlight. Is it too late? That thought hums in your ears all night. You sit in bed, the letter beside you on the nightstand, the locket pressed between your palms. The silence feels different now, not empty, expectant, like something is about to begin. Next morning, you wake up before the birds, make coffee, pack a small suitcase. You pull out the map you haven't used since your cousin's wedding in 1987 and trace your finger across to Montana. It's far, but not farther than you've already waited. You write a note and leave it on the table right under the porch light switch. Gone to find him. Light stays on till I get back. Then you walk outside, lock the door, and step into the morning air with a spine straighter than it's been in years. The town doesn't know yet, but soon they will, 'cause today, after 50 years, you're going to answer a letter. You've always hated driving long distances. Back in the 80s, you used to say anything over 3 hours required either a co-pilot or a priest. But this feels different. The hum of the wheels, the stretch of highway, the way the miles slip under you like waves under a boat. It's not a chore, it's a mission. You've packed light 3 dresses, 2 cardigans, a photo of him in uniform, and his letter folded neatly in your purse like a passport. You've also packed his jacket, the one that still smells like mothballs, and memory. You don't know why. Maybe in case he's cold. Maybe in case you need to remember how he once filled it. You pass through towns that look like yours used to one blinking traffic light, a general store kids, riding bikes without helmets. America, even in 2022, still has echoes of 1955 if you squint the right way. In one diner, you order black coffee and apple pie for breakfast. The waitress doesn't blink. Good choice, she says. She doesn't know you're chasing a ghost. Montana is a distant word on road signs, and yet it feels closer with every gas stop. You call ahead, find out he's in a care facility in a town called Livingston. Not big, not flashy, just there. The nurse on the phone says he doesn't get many visitors, that he keeps to himself, that sometimes he forgets the year. But then she hesitates, lowers her voice like she's telling you a secret, but he asks about someone named Sunbeam every week. You nearly drop the phone. Historians still argue whether trauma leaves the mind in fragments or just buries things whole, but something in you believes this love carves its name, even in the broken places. The next night, you stop at a roadside motel. The carpet smells like ketchup and old cigarettes. You lie in bed staring at the ceiling fan creaking in slow, hypnotic circles. You think about what you'll say, how you'll look, whether he'll even recognize you. Then you laugh because after 50 years, you're still worried about your hair. Sleep comes in patches dreamless, the kind where your body rests, but your heart keeps pacing. By morning, your hands tremble as you steer toward the address. The town is quiet, not eerie, just hushed, like it's waiting too. The nursing home is beige and humble with a plastic sign out front that says Autumn Pines Living Center. It looks like it could use a coat of paint, but the lawn is neat and wind chimes hang by the door. You sit in the parking lot for 10 whole minutes, clutching the steering wheel like it might bolt. Finally, you step out. Inside, the smell of disinfectant mixes with something warmer cinnamon. Someone's baking. You follow the nurse down the hall. Your shoes squeak. Every step feels like it belongs in a different lifetime. And then you see him. Gray hair, wrinkled hands, sitting by a window staring into the garden. There's a blanket draped over his lap and a book in his hands, open but unread. He doesn't look up when you enter. The nurse whispers, "That's him." You nod. You take a step, then another, and when you're within a few feet, you say it. Quiet, steady, like a spell. "Hey, soldier." He lifts his head. His eyes, those same blue-gray ones you used to trace with your fingers, blink slowly. And then, "Sunbeam," your throat tightens. You nod. He smiles. Not wide, not sure, but real. "I knew you'd come," he says. You don't cry right away. It's like your tear ducts have signed a non-disclosure agreement with your heart. But your knees go soft, and your hand finds the nearest chair before your body makes a dramatic entrance onto the linoleum floor. He's watching you with that kind of tentative hope only old men and stray dogs seem to carry. You sit across from him, your purse clutched to your chest, like it contains the Ark of the Covenant. The nurse slips away. The hallway swallows her steps. For a moment, neither of you speaks. Then you say you look different, and he laughs a real laugh, gravelly warm, full of dust and daylight. 50 years will do that to a guy. You want to say everything, all at once. That you waited, that you didn't marry, that the porch light never went out, that you still have the stupid dress with the pearl buttons. But you say none of it, because how do you unpack half a century in one breath? So instead, you reach into your purse and pull out the letter, unfolded, soft at the creases. He looks at it like it's a photograph of his own handwriting, like it belongs to someone else. "They said it got lost," you say gently. "It found you," he replies, voice quiet. "That's all that matters." You hand it to him. He holds it like a relic, like maybe if he reads it again, he'll remember what it felt like to be 23 and afraid of ruining someone else's life with the mess of your own. Historians still argue whether the mental health care system of the 1970s failed more men than it helped, but men like him. They didn't wait for help. They hid, fled, vanished into the folds of government forms and side streets. He tells you bits and pieces, halting careful like his stories made of glass. He came home early, medevaced out after an ambush. His knee never healed right. Neither did his head. Loud sounds made him sweat. Crowds made him flinch. Letters to you were started and destroyed. He didn't recognize himself, so how could he ask you to? He bounced between cities, slept in shelters, found odd jobs, changed names. He even worked at a library in Utah for 2 years funny, because you always teased him for never finishing a book. Eventually, a VA program picked him up. He's been in and out of facilities ever since. "No one ever looked for me," he says, staring out the window. "I did you say too quickly." He turns. You nod. I waited. His eyes gloss over, and for the first time he looks truly old. You didn't have to, he whispers. You smile. I know, but I did. A quirky tidbit you once read in a trivia book surfaces now uninvited, but fitting pigeons can recognize individual human faces. They remember kindness. So do people when given the chance. The next few hours move like honey. You walk the garden. He tells you about his roommate who thinks he's Elvis and the nurse who sneaks him chocolate pudding on Thursdays. You laugh. A lot. More than you expected. He asks if you ever married. You shake your head. He says nothing for a long time. Then he touches your hand just lightly, a ghost of a gesture. You really waited, he murmurs. The sun is starting to set, coloring the window in shades of orange and brass, and suddenly you don't care about the 50 years you lost. You only care that this moment is real. I never stopped being your sunbeam, you say. He smiles. I never stopped looking for the light. Hope is a funny thing. It ages differently than the rest of you. Your knees might ache and your hair might forget its original color, but hope, when it's real, doesn't wrinkle. It waits, quietly, patiently, like an old song that never leaves your head. You visit him every day after that. Mornings with muffins, afternoons with puzzles, evenings with Sinatra crackling from your portable speaker. You learn that he likes his coffee with too much cream now, and he hates tapioca. That his memory has holes in it, some small, some the size of a canyon, but your name somehow remains intact. He never forgets you. The nurses start leaving a second chair by his window. Someone brings a second mug. You don't ask them to. People just know. One day he looks at you and says, "You still wear the locket?" You nod. "Open it," he says. You've opened it thousands of times. You know exactly what's inside the black and white photo of him in uniform, taken behind the high school gym before he shipped out, and a tiny pressed violet from your first date. But this time it feels different, like proof. I never took it off, you say. He holds your gaze for a long time. Then he reaches into the drawer by his bed and pulls out something wrapped in a napkin. Been saving this, he mumbles. You unwrap it. It's the ring, thin, gold, engraved on the inside with your initials and the year 1972. You gasp. I bought it before I left, he says. Carried it with me the whole time. Lost everything else. Not this. You don't say anything. You just slide it onto your finger where it fits like it always belonged. Historians still argue whether the objects we hold on to define us more than our memories. But some things like this ring don't need debate. They simply are. Your daily visits stretch into weeks. You find yourself humming again, smiling at strangers. You even paint your nails for the first time in 2 decades, just pale pink, the way he used to say reminded him of cherry blossoms in spring. The town back home calls you now and then. Your neighbor offers to water the plants. The principal at the elementary school sends a card signed by all your former students. One kid now, apparently a lawyer, writes Miss R. You taught me patience. I never forgot. A quirky fact you overhear from one of the orderly's turtles can recognize voices and respond with emotion. You smile at that, because you've been waiting like a turtle, slow, steady, invincible in your stubbornness. One night you bring a photo album, the kind with plastic sleeves and yellowing corners. He flips through each page with care. You watch his eyes dance over moments he wasn't there for, but somehow still feels part of. You show him your garden, your house, the porch light. It's still on, he asks. You nod. I even left a note. He chuckles. That light got me home. The sky outside fades from purple to navy. A gentle breeze filters through the open window. He reaches for your hand again, stronger this time. I want to come back with you, he says. Your heart skips like a needle on vinyl. You sure? He nods. The nurses say he's stable enough to travel. The social worker arranges the paperwork. You spend 2 more days helping him pack even though he doesn't own much. A few books, some letters, and now your photograph tucked into the Bible on his nightstand. The night before you leave, he tells you something he's never said out loud before. I thought I'd die in that room. I didn't think anyone would remember me. You look at him forehead to forehead and whisper, I never forgot. The next morning, you buckle him into the passenger seat of your car. He turns to you smiling like a boy about to skip town for the summer. Mind if I nap, he asks. Not at all, you say, starting the engine. I'll wake you when we're home. You drive slow. Not because you're nervous, though you are, but because the road feels sacred now. Like every mile you pass through is being rewritten, washed clean of 50 years of waiting. His fingers drum lightly on the armrest as he dozes off beside you, lips parted slightly, the rhythm of breath soft and even. You steal glances when you can, noticing the curve of his jaw, the deep lines around his eyes, the flecks of white in his eyebrows. He's different, yes, but still him. The highway stretches ahead, long and straight. Montana blurs into Wyoming, then into Colorado. Every once in a while he stirs, asks what time it is, then grins when you say something sarcastic, like, it's 1975, you made it. You stop at small-town diners and old gas stations. People look at the two of you curious, maybe charmed. One waitress asks how long you've been married. 50 years, you say, without skipping a beat. He smirks into his scrambled eggs. Give or take a war. You make it back after 3 days. As you pull into town, you notice things that haven't changed. The leaning telephone pole by the post office, the graffiti on the bridge that reads, God is real, and so is Marcia. But there are new things too. Electric scooters, solar panels on rooftops, a new traffic light that everyone hates. You drive past the church, past the bakery, past the school, every place a memory, every block its own flashback. And then your house. The porch still stands white paint, flaking in some spots. The flower boxes are blooming because your neighbor's daughter kept her promise. And there it is, that glow, the light, still on, still waiting. He stares at it, silent. Been on since you left, you say. He opens the car door slow but steady. You grab his bag, help him up the steps. The wood creaks under your combined weight. Then he stops. Wait. You pause. What is it? He turns to you, eyes gleaming under the porch glow. Let me turn it off. You blink, taken aback. Are you sure? He nods. It's time. Historians still argue whether symbolic gestures matter more to those who make them or those who witness them. But this moment is both. He reaches for the switch. His fingers hover for a second, then click. Darkness. But it's not cold, not sad, just peaceful. Inside the house smells like cinnamon and lemon polish. Thank the neighbor's daughter again. He walks through it like a museum. The jacket hanging by the door. The cedar-lined drawer. The photograph of you at 20 with your eyes full of tomorrows. In the kitchen you've set 2 cups. He notices, smiles. I always knew you were stubborn, he says, sipping. But this is biblical. You both laugh. That night, he sleeps in the guest room. You offer the bedroom, but he shakes his head, one step at a time. The sheets are crisp. The lamp flickers. He sighs when his head hits the pillow, like someone who's finally allowed to rest. You lie in your room staring at the ceiling. The silence is different now, not lonely, just shared. A quirky tidbit flickers to mind. In Iceland, there's a museum dedicated entirely to failed love letters. One curator once said, every unopened envelope is a ghost. You smile in the dark, yours made it home. Around 3 a.m., you hear movement. You find him in the living room, sitting on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, looking out the window. Can't sleep, you ask. He shakes his head. I just wanted to see it from the inside. You sit beside him, 2 silhouettes framed in moonlight. You okay, you ask. He leans his head gently against yours. I am now, and for the first time in 50 years, so are you. The morning sunlight slices through the curtains warm and golden. You wake to the smell of coffee, real coffee, not the instant kind you've been lazily making for years. He's already in the kitchen wearing your faded world's okayest cook apron and looking completely at home as he frowns over the toaster. It's strange and sweet and surreal all at once, like time folded neatly. and handed you back what it had taken. I burned the first batch, he admits as you walk in. You shrug. Some traditions are sacred. You eat breakfast on the porch. He sits in the chair that used to sit empty all these years, the one that slowly weathered beside yours. Now it creaks under his weight and the stories he carries. Birds chirp in the hedges. The mail truck passes. Life feels shockingly normal. Do they still have those cinnamon rolls at the bakery, he asks. Only on Wednesdays. It is Wednesday. You both laugh. You haven't laughed this easily in years. Later, you drive downtown. Slowly, of course, he's still getting used to the world not spinning. The bakery smells the same, even though it's under new management. The girl behind the counter blinks when you walk in. Miss R, she asks, is that you? You nod. She looks at him confused. Then her face shifts. Recognition doesn't come in words. It comes in the silence before the gasp. This is him, she whispers. You nod again. Her eyes fill. She runs to the back. Within 15 minutes, the entire block seems to know. People start showing up. First your neighbor, then your former students now grown, then the priest. Even George the mailman, who once tried to woo you with cologne and cornbread. They gather around you both like it's a parade and your royalty returning from exile. It's overwhelming. It's beautiful. It's absurd. A teenager says, wait, you're the porch light lady. You nod. She whispers, that's kind of legendary. Quirky historical side note during White Swan. There was a British woman named Ethel who reportedly left a kettle boiling for over 5 years, convinced her POW husband might walk through the door any second. She later became a symbol of steadfastness. Your story. It's starting to feel like that. He's quiet during the crowd's praise, squeezing your hand from time to time. Then at one point, he leans into your ear and says, they're making me feel like Bigfoot. You snort into your coffee. After the bakery, you walk to the library. It's been remodeled, sure, but the bones are the same. The librarian, an older woman with bifocals and a diamond-shaped brooch, hands you both a folder. I thought you might want this, she says softly. Inside photocopies of old newspaper clippings. One is the MIA notice, another a faded photo of him in basic training, and then an editorial from 1982 titled The Woman Who Waits. You'd forgotten about that one. You never read it at the time. He reads the headline and raises his eyebrows. Dramatic much. You shrug. I was going through a poetic phase. He smiles. That night, you light the porch for old time's sake, not out of habit but ceremony. The two of you sit side by side as the street hums its usual lullaby. You sip cocoa. He sips tea. Somewhere a dog barks. A window shuts. The moon glows fat and silver. I thought I'd be afraid, he says. Of what? That the world would have moved on without me. You reach for his hand fingers interlocking like puzzle pieces. It didn't. It just made space. He leans back, exhales slowly. You ever think about what would have happened if that letter came on time? All the time, you say. But then again, maybe it arrived exactly when it was supposed to. Historians still argue whether fate is just chaos in costume. But right now, sitting under that familiar bulb with your ghost, returned to flesh, you don't need answers. Just presence. I'm glad I wrote it, he whispers. I'm glad I waited. Autumn arrives gently, like someone tiptoeing into a room. The leaves start their slow burn from green to gold, and the air carries that faint nostalgic smell of smoke and cinnamon. It's always been your favorite season. He remembers that, picks up a leaf one morning and hands it to you like a flower. Still your color, he says. You tuck it into the pages of your old diary, right between two entries written exactly 50 years apart. The two of you settle into something resembling a rhythm. He starts attending physical therapy at the local clinic where the receptionist calls him Mr. Sunbeam, and he never corrects her. You make casseroles again, real ones, with the fancy cheese, the kind you stopped bothering with sometime around 1996. He reads to you in the evenings, his voice raspier now, but still steady. You sit cross-legged on the couch, sometimes pretending you're back in that high school gym, hiding behind the bleachers, whispering about the future, like it was a place you could pack a suitcase for. There are, of course, difficult days. Sometimes he forgets what year it is, or the name of the street you both grew up on. Sometimes he stares out the window too long. Sometimes you catch him flinching at a siren in the distance. The war still lives in him, just quieter now. One morning, you find him standing barefoot on the porch, eyes misty. "I dreamed I was there again," he says. "But this time I couldn't find the way out." You take his hand and say, "Then I'll wait at the door until you do." Historians still argue whether trauma ever truly leaves the body or just learns to sleep beneath the skin. But either way, you know love is the blanket you pull over it. One afternoon, while sorting through old boxes in the attic, you find a Polaroid of him from the summer of '71, shirtless, holding a lemonade, grinning like he had just figured out how to bottle joy. You bring it downstairs. He laughs when he sees it. "God, I had too many teeth." You frame it. Later that week, you receive a letter in the mail. Not the kind that changes a life, but the kind that reminds you it's still moving forward. It's from the Department of Veterans Affairs. They've updated his status from MIA to returned verified. It's official now. The record books have caught up with the truth. You don't frame that one, but you save it anyway. A quirky news clipping falls out of the envelope. A journalist is writing a piece on lost love stories that found their way home. Somehow, she heard about yours. She wants to interview you both. You laugh. He groans. "I haven't done an interview since a sergeant yelled at me in '74. You write back only if we get to keep the headline." The next weekend, the reporter arrives with a microphone and notepad and tears in her eyes before you even say hello. She listens as you both speak haltingly honestly, filling in the gaps the letter didn't. "Why did you wait?" she asks you. You pause, think, then answer, because he was worth the calendar. She writes that down word for word. Later, after she's gone and the silence wraps around you like an old friend, he leans in. "Do you ever regret it?" You think for a moment. "No," you say. "Waiting wasn't easy, but loving you, that was always simple." He smiles. "Then we're even, because loving you is the only thing I still remember on the bad days." The leaves begin to fall in earnest, now a soft rain of color. You rake together. He mostly supervises claiming knee protocol, which is fine by you. You like doing the heavy lifting if he's the one waiting at the porch. And yes, the light's still on. Not because it has to be, but because now it shines for something else entirely. For presence, for gratitude, for every missed year that now sits warm and breathing beside you in the evening chill. The first snowfall comes earlier than expected that year. Just a thin, powdery layer that glazes the streets and hushes the world. You both watch from the window, your mug steaming Sinatra, crooning softly from the old record player. He leans his shoulder into yours and says, "You know what? This reminds me of." What? December '71, that walk behind the football field. I told you I was leaving, and you didn't cry until I turned around. You chuckle. "That's because I didn't want you to see. I had a reputation." He squeezes your hand. "Well, I saw." There's comfort in that now, in knowing that the person who left isn't the same as the one who came home. But somehow the love never asked either of them to be perfect. He's not strong like he used to be. His steps are slower. His memory flickers like a candle in wind. But every time you say sunbeam, he smiles like it's a password to somewhere only the two of you know. That week, the bakery down the street names a pastry, after you both the porch light roll. Too much cinnamon, not enough icing, but it sells out in hours. People stop you in the street, now ask if they can take a photo. Tell you they shared your story with their mothers, their daughters, their own lost loves. You're not used to being a symbol. You're just someone who didn't move on in the way people expect, someone who chose stillness over replacement. He takes it in stride. "Took me 50 years to become famous," he jokes. "At least let me comb my hair." A local TV station does a segment. You sit beside him on the porch, yes, that porch, and the anchor asks what it was like the moment you saw him again after all that time. You say it felt like a page that had waited too long to be turned. The town starts preparing for the holidays. You're asked to light the tree in the town square. You say no at first. Too many people, too much fuss. But he says, come on, let's give them something to believe in. So you do. You stand together beneath a string of golden bulbs hand in hand and flip the switch. The tree explodes in light. The crowd claps. And you both stand there, two wrinkles in the fabric of time, finally stitched together again. That night, back at the house, you sit by the fire. He falls asleep mid-sentence, head against your shoulder, snoring like an old radiator. You don't wake him. Instead, you watch the fire and think about all the things you lost to the year's birthdays, anniversaries, chances, but also all the things that survived in spite of them. A quirky historical tidbit you once read floats up in your mind. In 1943, a soldier sent his wife a snow globe from the front lines. She kept it on her windowsill for 62 years, and it never once cracked. Love, like glass, can be fragile, but the real kind, it's stubborn. The next morning, you decorate the house. Wreaths, candles, the works. He helps hang ornaments on a small tree in the living room. You find one shaped like a little train, faded and dented. Recognize this, you ask. He studies it, then laughs. That's from the station gift shop, isn't it? I gave you that before I left. You nod. It's the only ornament I never packed away. He hangs it on the highest branch he can reach, stands back, smiles. You really waited, he whispers again. You say nothing, just pull him close. Not because you need to remind him, but because holding on has never been the hard part. Letting go was. Winter deepens, the kind of cold that sneaks into your bones and reminds you of every year you've ever lived. But the house is warm, and not just from the fire. It's warm because someone is humming in the kitchen again. It's warm because 2 chairs at the table are finally in use. It's warm because after 50 winters alone, you're not the only breath fogging up the windows. You've fallen into a rhythm now, strange and sacred. Mornings are for reading the paper aloud, even when the headlines are bleak. Afternoons are for letters, yes, real ones, written in cursive on thick paper with ink pens that smudge a little too much. You write to old friends, old students, a niece in Oregon you lost touch with after her wedding. He writes too, though slower. Sometimes he stops in the middle of a sentence, stares out the window, and says, I'm not sure how to end it. You always reply, just write the truth. One snowy evening, you suggest something wild. Let's take a photo. He groans. I look like Father Time had a rough night. You laugh. So what? Let them see what survival looks like. You dig out the old tripod and the click timer camera, position it just right on the porch. He wraps an arm around you as the shutter flashes. In the photo, you're both smiling eyes, squinting cheeks red from cold. Behind you, the porch light glows again, not as a symbol of waiting now, but of arrival. Historians still argue whether photographs preserve moments or merely echo them, but when you print the image and tape it to the fridge, it doesn't feel like a relic. It feels like proof. You start working on a scrapbook, one for the both of you. Each page tells a different story. The letter, the road trip, the first cinnamon roll, the ring. You add the Polaroid from 71 next to the new porch photo, captioned, Then and Now, Some Things Don't Change. He finds you doing this one afternoon and says you're preparing for something. You pause. I'm remembering forward. He nods like he understands. There are doctor visits now, more frequent. A cardiologist in the next town over a neurologist who speaks in soft tones and scribbles too quickly. The results are expected, not urgent, not disastrous, just the kind of truth that comes wrapped in clinical phrases. Mild cognitive decline, progressive symptoms, nothing we can't manage yet. You sit in the parking lot afterward, neither of you speaking. The sky is heavy with snow clouds. He looks at his hands, flexes his fingers slowly. I wasted so much time, he says. You shake your head. You survived. There's a difference. He nods again slower this time. That weekend you have guests. Not many, just a few brave souls from the town, bringing over baked goods and casseroles and asking, do you mind if we hear your story again? Some even bring their kids. One child, maybe 9, sits wide-eyed as he talks about boot camp, the jungle heat, the way letters never arrived when you needed them most. The girl asks, were you scared? He says yes, but not because of the war. Then what? He glances at you. I was scared she'd forget me. The girl grins. She didn't. Later, after everyone leaves and the leftover casserole is tucked in the fridge, he stands at the window watching the snow fall. I don't want to go anywhere, he says. Not now. You're not, you reply. You're home. A quirky fact you once read in a second-hand almanac pops into your head. Some turtles, if separated for long enough, will forget the path back to water, but not the way sunlight felt on their shell. You tell him that. He grins. Well, then I guess I'm a turtle. You smile, and I'm your porch. The light stays on that night, not because you need it, but because it's beautiful, because some habits don't have to be broken if they still make you feel safe, and because tomorrow always deserves to find you glowing. Spring tiptoes in without warning. One morning you wake to birdsong, and the snow outside has melted into soft puddles reflecting a pale blue sky. You open the windows and let in the air fresh damp laced with mud and blooming things. He says it smells like second chances. You agree. The garden neglected for years begins to call you. You answer. He watches from the porch with a blanket draped over his lap, offering commentary that is exactly 70% helpful and 30% teasing. That rosebush needs therapy, he jokes. You toss a glove at him. At least it came back. You dig up the old plot plant, fresh basil and lavender, just like you used to. He insists on helping with the marigolds. You let him. It's messy, slow work, but joyful. The way children must feel when they discover they can build something from dirt. A neighbor stops by with fresh lemonade. She takes one look at the two of you covered in soil and sunlight and says, it's good to see life blooming again. She doesn't just mean the garden. You begin going on walks together, just short ones down the street and back past the old park, the pond, the tree where he carved your initials when you were 17. The carving's faded now, softened by time, but still legible. Still yours. He pauses when he sees it. You kept it, he says. You touch the bark, of course. A quirky botanical fact comes to mind. Some trees, when injured, will seal the wound with new growth, turning scars into stronger grain. You look at the tree, then at him, and it makes perfect sense. Back home, you sort through another box from the attic, this one filled with old cassette tapes, mixed music from decades ago. He insists on finding a way to play them. After a little effort and some WD-40, the player wheezes to life. You sit on the couch as the room fills with the sounds of Janis Joplin, Otis Redding, and a mix labeled Summer 1971, Road Trip Dreams. He sings along to some. Badly, you join him, worse. The house once too quiet, now echoes with off-key lyrics and half-remembered harmonies. You can't stop laughing. One evening, he disappears into the spare room and returns with a small box. Inside a stack of notebooks. I wrote, he says, even when I didn't send them. You look at the pages, shaky handwriting, worn paper ink that faded but didn't run. Stories of missed sunsets, imagined conversations, apologies, promises. He'd written them all, dozens of letters never mailed, each one addressed to Sunbeam. You read them slowly. Each one feels like another brick being set back into place. You never forgot me, you say. I forgot everything else. You start reading one aloud. Halfway through, your voice cracks. He finishes the sentence for you. The next morning, you hang one of the letters in a frame and place it on the hallway wall. Above it, you write with a paintbrush. He came back. Visitors notice it. Some ask about it. Most just smile and walk slower. Historians still argue whether love is a function of timing or perseverance. But when you wake each morning to his voice humming from the kitchen, when he misplaces his glasses for the third time that day, and you find them in the refrigerator again when he falls asleep mid-sentence during the third rerun of Jeopardy, you know it's neither. It's choosing, every day, even when the world makes it hard, even when decades pass. He brings you coffee one afternoon, sits beside you, and says, I never thought I'd get to live this part. What part? The part where I get to grow old with you. You reach over, touch his wrist. You're not growing old. You're catching up. He laughs. Fair. Outside, the porch light remains off, but inside everything glows. Summer rolls in with unapologetic brightness, sweat on your collarbone lemonade that melts ice too fast, and the hum of cicadas so loud it feels like the sky is ringing. He takes to sitting shirtless on the porch, a ball cap shading his eyes, declaring himself the watchdog of lazy afternoons. You let him have the title, even though the cat across the street scares him more than burglars ever could. You start hosting Sunday dinners, small ones at first, just your closest friends, a couple from church and the occasional curious neighbor who pretends not to recognize the couple from the news feature. Word spreads. The table gets longer. People bring dishes and stories and children who giggle when he winks at them. He becomes part of the fabric of the town again, maybe not in the way he was before, but in the way that matters. The bookstore invites him to talk about his journals. The high school asks him to speak to students about resilience. He agrees to both, but insists on bringing you every time. I forget things he says. She remembers the good stuff. Historians still argue whether post-traumatic growth is real or a hopeful illusion, but when you watch him gently explain to a 17-year-old boy what it means to forgive yourself, you don't need consensus. You have evidence. The two of you begin a new habit, journaling together at dusk. Not the heavy kind, just lists. Little moments. A dragonfly landing on his shoe. The banana bread that didn't collapse in the middle. The way your hand still fits perfectly in his. Just the ordinary magic, you say. Exactly, he replies. That's what we miss the most. The porch becomes your sanctuary again. Not a beacon anymore, but a witness. You sit out there with your drinks, your stories, and your silence. He sometimes dozes off mid-sentence. You let him. One evening you find an envelope on the porch swing. No stamp, just your name. Inside is a letter from one of your old students. He writes about how your story gave him the courage to wait for someone who matters. He signs it, thanks for keeping the light on. You show it to him. He reads it twice. Smiles, eyes misty. We did something good, he says. You nod. We lived. That was the good part. A quirky note you once read resurfaces. Did you know seahorses mate for life, often curling their tails around each other to drift in tandem with the ocean current? You think of that sometimes when he leans his head against yours during your evening walks, how the world keeps rushing and you just float through it together. As July wanes, you take a day trip, just the two of you, no destination. You drive with the windows down, letting the breeze undo years of stillness. You end up at the lake where your family used to vacation. It hasn't changed much. The water still smells like algae and suntan lotion. Kids still scream joyfully at the shoreline. You find a spot beneath an old willow tree. He takes your hand and says, let's stay here forever. You laugh. We didn't wait 50 years to die by mosquito bites. Still, you stay until the sun dips below the horizon and the sky turns a bruised purple. On the way home, he falls asleep. You glance over, watching his chest rise and fall in steady rhythm, the same way it did that night on the couch. The weight of him beside you is no longer unfamiliar. It feels like gravity finally gave up its fight to pull you apart. Back in town, the porch light remains off, but your windows glow. You tuck him in that night. He's pretending not to be tired, mumbling about how men his age don't need naps. You roll your eyes, kiss his forehead. Good night, old man, you whisper. He smiles already halfway to dreaming. Good night, sunbeam. Late August arrives like a sigh. The air cools just enough to remind you summer doesn't last forever, and the porch swing starts creaking in a more thoughtful way. You both begin talking less and listening more. Not because you've run out of things to say, but because words aren't always the point anymore. One afternoon, you find him sitting alone in the guest room, the one that slowly became his room until it wasn't just a place to sleep anymore. He's holding an old shoebox, the one you hadn't seen in years. Your letters, you ask? He nods. I read them last night, every one. You sit beside him, watch him unwrap a bundle of envelopes tied with twine. One falls open. The date reads, May 7th, 1982. I wrote this after a dream, he says softly. You were wearing that dress, the one with the little flowers. You remember that one. You gave it to Goodwill after a moth got to it, but now you wish you hadn't. He continues reading. His voice halts sometimes, not from emotion, but from age. But he gets through it. You stay silent, just listening. The words you once wrote to a man you feared was gone forever, now returning to you like boomerangs thrown into eternity. When he finishes, you take the letter, fold it back, and kiss the crease. He smiles like he did when you were 19. I'm thinking about writing back, he jokes. You grin. Don't take another 50 years. You both laugh, soft, familiar. Later that week, he asks for a walk. It's harder now, slower, but he insists. You pass the tree with your initials again. This time he stops. I want to add something, he says. You hand him your keys, and with the edge of a house key, he scratches in a date beneath the old letters, 2022. You step back. The sun filters through the leaves, dappled and warm. The bark reads like a timeline, J&R, and now J&R, 2022. You exhale. He came back, you say aloud. He chuckles. And she didn't hit me with a rake. Back home, you begin what you call the legacy box. Old photos, favorite recipes, one of his journals, a copy of the letter, the ring box, a handwritten list of things you learned from each other. He adds a final entry at the bottom. Lesson Psychic 50. Never underestimate a woman with a porch light and good aim. The nights grow cooler. You pull out the thick quilts, brew cider instead of tea. The silence deepens again, but not like before. It's softer now, wiser, a blanket instead of a hole. One evening, you wake to find him standing in the hallway, looking at the photo of you both on the porch. He's not confused, just contemplative. I want this one at the service, he says, voice steady. You nod. Promise me, he adds. You step forward, touch his face. Only if you promise to haunt me if I don't. He smiles. Deal. The next morning, he's slower than usual. Doesn't say much over breakfast, but his eyes are clear. He takes your hand before you clear the dishes. Thank you for the waiting, he says. Thank you for coming home, you reply. He naps longer that afternoon, the kind of nap that feels like a soft goodbye, but you don't know it yet. You just watch him breathe. You stay close. And that night, the stars come out early. The sky is velvet. The windows glow. The porch light remains off because the one who needed it is already home. And now, dear listener, it's time to let go gently. You've walked through 5 decades of waiting, of aching, of remembering, and somehow of beginning again. You've lit a porch light every night in your heart, hoping the door might open one more time. And tonight it did. So take a deep breath, in, out. Think of that house, quiet, wooden, worn by love, warmed by hope. Picture the porch swing, just slightly swaying in the breeze. The cup of tea growing cold on the railing. The way light once glowed there, not out of need, but out of never giving up. The world moves fast. People come and go. But every once in a while, someone returns. Not when you expect them to. Not when it makes sense. But when your heart is still and the silence says you're not alone anymore. Maybe you're the one who waited. Maybe you're the one who's still gone. Either way, there's light for you somewhere. And someone who left it on. So rest easy tonight. You are remembered. You are loved. And your story's not over yet. Good night, Sunbeam. Sweet dreams.